So when we work with global companies that are based out of the US, we typically recommend three core strategies and help to implement those. The first is to create kind of a healthy rivalry or competition among your global R&D teams. Carlos Ghosn, the CEO of Renault and Nissan, did this when he asked his engineers in India, France, and Japan to solve a technical problem. And all of them solved the problem with equal quality, but the team in India, who I would argue has been exposed to resource constraints more than the other teams, they solved that same problem at a fifth of the cost. And it created not only this kind of fun tension, it created a sense of urgency, which I think is something else that can keep all innovation initiatives on the back burners. The second step companies can take to drive frugal innovation is really to leverage the knowledge of their global employees. So for example, very often when I work with US-based global companies, they'll bring, let's say, a director from Shanghai, Mumbai, other places around the world to headquarters to sort of understand the culture of headquarters. And that is important, but sometimes it actually takes out the local knowledge of those stakeholders too. So I would argue it's equally important to make sure this doesn't happen, but also to send senior leaders from the US to emerging economies, to emerging countries, so that those senior leaders can understand what are the problems that exist here for our employees, for businesses, for consumers, so that they can return then and actually have a better relationship with and interact better with their global teams and help better solve problems. The third thing that companies can do to drive frugal innovation initiatives, and again, I would argue all innovation initiatives, but more critical here, is to foster an environment that allows for pilot programs. Very often people ask me, well, how do I get started with a frugal innovation initiative in the US, for example? Sometimes if we do something like this in an India or a China, it's a little bit cheaper to deploy, for example. So one way that we do that is through pilot programs. If we have smaller bite-sized programs that are supported, then we can run these pilots at a lower cost, but still have the learnings that come with them. Now, the way that we have seen the most success with frugal innovation initiatives in US-based companies is through these kind of under-the-radar programs that are kind of small. Usually there's one senior leader who buys in, allows their bottom-up team to kind of support it. They find success, then the company finds out about it on a larger scale, and then the culture of frugal innovation starts to become more imbued across the organization. So pilot programs are a very important way that companies can start to unleash frugal innovation initiatives without too much risk. And just I would add one more thing, which is that when we think about pilots and experiments of any kind, which is critical to all innovation, we also have to foster a culture that isn't afraid of failure. There's very often sort of this, oh, that didn't work, I'm going to sweep it under the rug, or I'm going to throw good money after bad because I want to keep this rolling till I move to the next phase of what it is that I'm doing. And that actually does happen. And when we think about frugal innovation initiatives that don't work in the way we think they will, we look for the learnings that emerge from those initiatives, because really that's what the return on investment is. And if we socialize anything, whether it's good or bad, that's the way we reduce the cost of any so-called failure, so that the same mistakes don't happen again, and the things that did work actually can get repeated.